morning. Welcome to Focus on the News. I'm Dick Black, joined today by John Tigas. John, good to have you here.
Always good to be here, Senator.
Well, we've got three topics. We're going to touch on Iowa's Catholic schools banning transgender pronouns and same-sex bathrooms and that kind of thing. And then we're going to touch on Mayor Adams of New York City. Seems he can't handle a few illegal aliens. He's getting just a drop in the bucket of what they've had across the border in Texas and Arizona. And then finally, we'll wrap up with another one of these very young, healthy, vibrant people, 25-year-old vaccine pharmacist who suddenly died, no cause of death identifiable. So anyway, we'll kick off with that. And what do you think of the Catholic diocese in Des Moines, Iowa?
Well, you're the Catholic in the room, so I didn't know there was still Catholics in Iowa. I was a little surprised, I thought the Lutherans took that over a long time ago in the Reformation or something, but it looks like the Catholics that are there are deciding to stand firm that some of this crazy transgender stuff is just nonsense. Apparently 17 Catholic schools and 80 churches in Southern Iowa put into effect that they were not going to play the transgender game. And that, by some people, are calling it unchristian. So you tell me, as a Catholic, how that's unchristian.
Well, I can't tell you that. I will tell you that the contest between homosexual sodomy and Christianity is a zero-sum game. It's not one of these things where you can say, let's give a little, let's take a little, let's find some middle ground. There is not a middle ground. The only way that Christianity can adopt to sodomy is to reject God and God's teaching. There's nothing in Scripture that is more vivid and clear than the rejection of sodomy. We look at Sodom and Gomorrah. The very name of sodomy comes from Sodom.
Yeah,
that's about as clear as you can get. And then we've got Jesus Christ, who very seldom spoke in violent terms. But the one exception that I know of is when he said that any man who causes these little ones who believe in me to sin, better that he be taken out to the sea and have a millstone tied around his neck and be dumped into the ocean. And I think historically that's been interpreted to refer to the homosexuals preying on children. So it's pretty clear. And what is amazing to me, though, John, this happens to be a group of Catholic schools, but it's just amazing how all of this stuff snuck up on us. And it's not as though we had some debate in Congress or debate in state governments over whether we should impose this bizarre regime of sodomy. Now, some places there were debates over it, but to a very large extent, it just suddenly emerged out of the revolution, the BLM, Antifa, very violent revolution with all of the burning of cities, the looting, the chasing people through the streets, beating them up, and assassinating police officers. And it just sort of suddenly appeared everywhere. Was that kind of your impression also?
Yeah, I know here in Loudoun County, when suddenly this, we call it the 80/40 policy came into being, it came out of the blue. We went right from racial divisions around George Floyd to suddenly, well, then you got to have this transgender policy. It really is interesting. And I think it's interesting that you are actually placing this in the same category as sodomy. Most of the transgender people would be like, oh, no, there's nothing to do with homosexuality. This is completely different. It's about having empathy for people who are confused about their sexuality. So you tell me, why do you equate this with sodomy?
Well, if you look at it within the school system, we've got a significant body of instructors who are homosexual, and they promote all sorts of alternative sexuality. We've got these people holding transgender story hours. They prey on little children, and they have homosexual men dressed up as women in very bizarre, kind of frightening costumes often. And they read to the children. The idea is just to jar them mentally,
Yeah.
and to bring about a change in them to where they become more submissive to the pedophiles within the institutions. And it's a constant grooming process. Traditionally, if you go back thousands of years, or hundreds of years, or 50 years, there's always been this linkage between the notion of homosexuality and pedophilia. I grew up as a kid, and they'd say, watch out for strange men in the bathroom. If you see something unusual, get out of there. And and I think I've mentioned to you before, I was briefly kidnapped, or at least there's a fellow attempt to kidnap me and my buddy, and it didn't work out real well for him.
That was the great snake escape, correct?
That's right. He ran off, and unbeknownst to him, he had 4 big, fat, venomous water moccasins slithering around on his floorboards. So, the lesson is never try to pick up Florida snake hunters if you're trying to prey on some kids. But there was a very famous book. It's called After the Ball. The title apparently referred to after the inaugural ball of Bill Clinton, who his number one priority was to force known homosexuals into the military.
Yeah. That was his first executive order as president.
Yes. And the interesting thing about this book, it lays out the blueprint for the homosexual movement in exquisite detail. And I recall, because I studied the book, because I worked to block Bill Clinton from being able to introduce gays in the military, and we succeeded. Put this thing out for 17 years. But I recall a line from the After the Ball book, and it said, one of our problems as a homosexual movement is that we have these people who are preying on children. And there are so many people out there who have encountered homosexual predators that it is a constant challenge for us, the homosexuals, to overcome this. Well, there's nothing new.
Let's just note, I mean, just this week, there was a big story on 2 homosexual men married, at least by the law, who had adopted 2 young boys. And it turns out that suddenly all these films come out. They're actually using them to do pornographic things they're making money off of. It's disgusting how prevalent that is. That's just one example, but you're 100% right. This happens a lot.
Yeah.
And those same people with perverted minds go into the schools, and then they try to set and sexualize children and prepare them to be the next prey. And the reality of that lifestyle, for a lot of folks, it's not true for all of them, but for a lot of them, they have a lot of partners. They continue to move from one to the next to the next. So to groom a bunch of young potential partners is to their best interest. And it's absolutely disgusting and evil. And the fact that the starting point for this, if we trace it back, really does go back to Christians, Catholic Church, Protestants, even, some other religions starting to embrace homosexuality as a normal and proper and something that, just people are born with and we should embrace. And that was the beginning of a major slide towards where it was no longer just, whatever you do in your bedroom is, up to you, to where we are forcing our bedroom on you. And if you don't like it, we're going to persecute you, or in my case, arrest you. That's where we're at. These are totalitarian people who are using totalitarian means now that they have subverted themselves into power. And I think that really is the deal, is there's an entire subset of our society that became very active, a very small percentage became very active in politics, and they penetrated and took over both parties. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
They have a huge influence in both parties. And their agenda is starting to be very, very obvious. And we're seeing in schools. Thank goodness that some the last few remaining Catholics in Iowa have decided to take a stand.
Well, it's a good sign, and I think this is what's happening in Iowa is really just symbolic of what's happening all across the nation. Is people are waking up, they're saying, "We've had it. We're not taking this anymore," and they're starting to push back. So, I think it's a good news story, and we'll continue following it.
Well, someone else who woke up, apparently, Mayor Eric Adams, traveled to El Paso. This seems to be a Democratic trend right now. I don't know what's going on. Head down to El Paso, and this is the guy who was big on letting illegals vote. Suddenly decided on Sunday that in a first-of-a-kind visit of a New York mayor to the border, said that no city deserves what is happening, said that this is a beautiful city, referring to El Paso, but also said that New York City can't handle it anymore, and was blaming federal government for lack of dealing with it. What is going on? Even Biden got to the border. Now, he didn't see anything, but why do you think there's suddenly a shift on the border?
Well, I think to some extent, the actions of Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, and some of the others who have started to send the illegal immigrants to these northern Democratic states, it's having a big effect because, well, they dumped a bunch of them at what's the fancy, ritzy white enclave up in Massachusetts. Was it Martha's Vineyard, or I don't know what? Anyway, but they're dropping them in places that are Democrat controlled, and all of a sudden, what used to just be, those Southern people, we don't care about them, they can rot in hell, and places in Arizona. There are places that literally have been seized by the illegal aliens, thousands and thousands of them coming across. And now all of a sudden, it's kind of funny because here in New York City, Mayor Adams, a consummate liberal to the end, all of a sudden, they're filling up all of their luxury hotels with illegal aliens. They're spending something like $1 billion a year to house this influx. There are a couple of numbers I've seen. One said several thousand, and then Bloomberg News said 15,000. So somewhere in there, but it's, it's like $1 billion a year. Well, I'm going to tell you, if they would probably declare a holiday in Arizona if all they had were 15,000 illegals in this state. And New York City isn't it our largest city? I think it is.
I believe so.
I think it's 8 million people.
What suburb you add into LA?
Yeah. So I think it's 8 million people up in New York. So if they can't absorb 15,000, imagine the millions flooding across the borders in Arizona, which I'll guarantee you none of their cities has a population anywhere approaching New York City. But all of a sudden, it seems to be waking up these woke liberal Democrat mayors, and they're saying, oh, wait a minute, this costs a lot of money. It impacts the housing supply and so forth. But you watch. The illegals get the best of everything. They're first in line. They're processed for all the welfare. They put them up in luxury hotels. And Fox News has been running articles about, or reports about how they're just dumping food in the trash because, it's not up to the standards of the illegals swarming across the borders. So they just trash it. They trash the hotels, and the hotels now become hotbeds for crime and prostitution, drug dealing, and so it's it is deteriorating the civilization within these Democrat cities, and now they're experiencing a little bit of what has been happening on the border. So I'm kind of delighted to see that Mayor Adams is suddenly having an awakening.
Yeah, it's really strange. I still can't 100% make sense. Some people would say, Biden is doing this just to increase the number of what would generally be left-leaning voters. Some people have said that it's just to create chaos and more division and to try to bring down the country. Others just say that these folks can't find their rear end with both hands and don't know what to do to stop it. What are your thoughts? Why does this continue the way that it's continuing? Millions and millions now this year. Millions are flooding into our country, and we're not doing anything to stop it.
What this is, it's an ethnic cleansing taking place. And the idea is you dump people in places that tend to be Republican leaning, like in Florida, and you try to water down the native population and replace them with people who are on the dole. These are people who immediately go on the welfare rolls, and so they're beholden to Democrats. So it's that.
You think it's that simple?
I think it is. Think about this. Occasionally you'll hear how much money has to be paid to the cartel mules who are bringing them across. And so you'll see numbers that are $7, $8, $9, $10,000 a person. Now think of it. We're supposed to believe that these people are living in thatched roof huts in Nicaragua, and one morning, the man of the house, stands up and he stretches and he's eating a little bit of tortilla or something, and he says, "Hey, Margarita, go under the straw on the floor and see if you can just get about $30,000 so that we can pay the mules. We go to the United States. Are you kidding me? How many
That's a lot of
Americans
tacos. That's a
that,
lot of tacos.
yes,
Yeah.
think of this. How many American families, regular working class people, you know, who work the restaurants and other places, how many of them could could pull $30,000 out from under the mattress to move somewhere? Not a whole lot.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of people don't have that.
Not almost nobody does right now after what's been
Yeah.
going on in this country. And
But this,
whatever they had is worth about 15-20% less
that's right.
automatically right now.
But the thing is, the point is that this vast sea, we're talking about millions of people who are coming across. Someone is funding that movement. Someone is subsidizing and incentivizing this movement of poor people from third world countries to flow across the borders. It is being paid for, it is organized, it is orchestrated. Some of it comes from drug cartels, but I don't think that's the primary source. The drug cartels are in the money-making business. They're
So
taking,
who's paying for it? Who do you believe is paying for it?
I think there are some of these mega billionaire globalists. I can think of names, but I don't want to mention them because I don't have the proof. But I suspect one in particular who is very active in trying to overturn civilization. I think he is a likely candidate. But the money is flowing. The money is coming in from major banks, from the dynasty bankers and so forth, and it is paying. This isn't just some movement of people to better life or something. This is a case where mega billionaires are paying people to cross the border, violate American law, take away housing from Americans. Because look, we had American citizens who are laying in cardboard boxes on the sidewalk. We don't have illegal aliens who come across the border and lay in cardboard boxes. Where do they go? They go to luxury hotels in New York City. It's Americans who get thrown out on the streets and have to live in cardboard boxes.
It is a bad situation, and we've almost become numb to it because it's been going on for so long, and it seems like there's no one concerned, at least in the federal government, with fixing it. Let's hope that our new Congress is able to do something to light a fire. I know they're looking at, potentially even impeaching Mayorkas for his incompetence in dealing with it. But man, it is a really tough situation. And when you start seeing Democrats going after Democrats on it, kind of makes you wonder if maybe we're turning a corner, but time will tell. Well, one thing that time told was that handing out vaccines and pushing the vaccine can lead to some problems. There's a 25-year-old doctor of pharmacy, University of Pittsburgh, that died suddenly. Sounds familiar? Just this last month, and she was heavily involved in vaccinating people. And she was a major advocate of making sure people were vaccinated. And so here again, there's been so many of these athletes, well-known people. We just had Lisa Marie Presley die. It just seems to be happening everywhere. Is this anecdotal, or we just, paint, suddenly these are just one-offs, or is there a way to connect these dots? What do you think, sir?
Well, first of all, now we don't know for a fact that she was vaccinated herself, but we do know from her sort of like a little obituary, said she loved teaching students, doing research, running multiple vaccine clinics, and sharing her passion and knowledge with others. it's hard for me to imagine that she ran multiple vaccine clinics without being vaccinated herself. But beyond that, we have no proof. But here's the thing. I was 25 once. You were 25 once.
I don't remember that at all.
But here, and I've seen pictures of her. She's a young, vibrant, beautiful girl. She looked quite healthy, and then she drops dead. Now, I had a big circle of friends and acquaintances and that kind of thing. I never experienced anybody just dropping dead at age 25. Did you?
No.
No.
I don't remember much at 25, but I definitely would have remembered if friends and people my age were dropping dead. And you're right. We see that when we had a young lady who was vaccinated to go overseas, was working for us at our event venue, and died in her sleep of a heart-related problem. It's bizarre. I've never seen anything like it. And particularly the athletic, these, people who are in their prime, that are some of the, less than 1% of the most fit people on the planet, that are having cardiac arrest on the football field or the soccer field or wherever they are. It's shocking. And it's, it's just hard not to believe that there's a connection, particularly now that even the CDC's acknowledged that there's myocarditis in young people who have taken the vax. So we've got a real problem. I mean, this is not going away. And unfortunately, they're still pushing this. I heard a commercial again this week, that was, I can't remember, it was near Maryland or Virginia, pushing the jab, get your, updated boosters. It's pretty awful.
Yeah, I think there seems to be abundant proof that for young people, let's say people under 50 years of age, your chances of dying from the jab are much, much, much greater than they are of dying of COVID. And so to me, particularly when you're talking about children, little, 5-year-old kids, to me, that is child abuse. It ought to be a criminal offense to give a vaccine shot, the COVID shot, to a child of that age. It's just a crime in my view. I mean, it should be a crime. It's not criminalized, but it should be.
Well, and to take it back to what we started with around pushing the transgender agenda, in a world in which parents seem to be even more protective than ever of their children. I mean, they don't want any risk, anything to happen to them. They can't go out and play. They can't do anything hardly other than, stay inside and watch a screen. We live in a world that actively advocates for the mutilation of children, advocates for giving them shots that have proven to be harmful. I mean, it's just this really weird, double-minded world that thinks safety, 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 and yet has no problem completely messing up children, both emotionally and physically. I don't get it. It is, I don't know. Do you have any sense of how did we get here?
It's a very bizarre logic. And we've gotten to the point where the mainstream media, and particularly the televised media, they coordinate their efforts. And when there is something major, perhaps they want to create a war in Ukraine. Perhaps they want to make everybody go into a state of terror over COVID. Maybe they want the nonviolent demonstration at the U.S. Capitol, principally nonviolent, to suddenly become an insurrection, an unarmed insurrection. Whatever it is that they do, if they coordinate their efforts and they pound and pound and pound on people, at a certain point, people just give in. They just, well, okay, I guess that seems to be what everybody is saying. Every channel I tune to, it's got the same message.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous, and I think, thank the Lord for Elon Musk, because uh, you know, I'd have been called a conspiracy theorist for saying that the US government and the deep state were trying to silence and censor opposition voices. We knew it was happening.
Yeah.
You almost have to have an admission of it before the mainstream media will acknowledge, well, okay, yeah, I suppose there's a little something going on here. But you look, I mean, there was criminal activity taking place with the FBI
Yeah.
and other U.S. government agencies.
What do you mean was?
Well, yeah, well,
Was and is.
it's getting a little more awkward for them to do it with Twitter today. But yeah, I mean, this is just, you know, they're fixing national elections, they're fixing local elections, and then when they fix the elections, they say nothing to see here. Anybody who says that the election is crooked needs to be destroyed and discredited. And yet here we see it. You know, it's all laid out there to where you had Democrat congressmen creating pressure on Twitter, saying, "Look, we want some action. We want you to join into this narrative that somehow Russia is influencing the elections." And there's absolutely no evidence, even though they keep repeating that, "Oh yeah, this happened, this happened." So
well, that's one of the great things, even with what we're able to do here, is to stay dedicated to getting the truth out, getting the facts out, instead of falling prey to the whatever the narrative that's being coordinated by the Davos, global cabal people, as well as the puppets that they have working for them here in the United States. So we're going to stay dedicated to that. For viewers out there, this is a place you can come to at least hear hard questions asked and to give you the best information that we can find, because we're going to stay informed, not by first and foremost following what the mainstream media says, but listening to true journalists, true fact finders all over the world that are actually working to make this a better place instead of trying to take control and jam, whether it's transgenderism or jabs or whatever else, into your body and into your brain. But I think we're wrapped up for another episode of Focus on the News, sir. What's your final word of encouragement for people today?
Well, that's right. It is good that there are alternative voices, and we're pretty entrenched, and we keep fighting the battle. So anyway, we will be back with you at 11 o'clock on Monday. And so this is Senator Dick Black and with John Tigas signing out for today, and we will see you then.